authenticity. Like, do you feel like for you, because there's a lot of voices out there, you know, and you are on a platform now where it's bigger and people can talk more and people can, you know, nobody's clicking on the one sentence anymore because they know the one sentence, it's part of a huge conversation. They don't even get to know what it all happened. And now they want the whole conversation.
Yeah, that's right.
They want to know who that is. But do you feel like for you, that you're coming along at a, like I'm 38, you know? I mean, I'm kind of a late bloomer, so I'm kind of maybe like 32 really, but I'm also like an old soul. So I guess I'm actually like, I'm back at 38. But
it was a quick trip.
Yeah, sorry, it was.
Yeah.
But, you know, I grew up in a time like, you know, a lot of our fathers and my friends' fathers, like, you know, they got divorces, they went for like younger women, or they, you know, they gave into this idea that they could have it all, you know, you know, I saw my mother not, you know, have to work hard and not get a kiss on her forehead before bed. You know, like she always had to be the one giving out any affection in our house. You know, I noticed that, you know, there's a lot of men my age who, it's not about the fight. There's nothing for us to do. You can't reprimand your children anymore. You can't fight anymore. It's more about lawyers. It's like, I just feel like there's a lot of men arriving at a point in their lives where they're like, what is it? Is there any value in me even being a man? And like our fathers were in wars and our fathers were in military, and there was some, you know, I was an American, but I feel like there's this aimless kind of, there's a lot of men wandering around aimlessly.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of confusion too,
but they're listening to you.
Yeah, well, men,
they're finding you.
Yes.
And like, it's like you're like this cool stepdad that showed up that actually like cares about our mom or something. Like, you know,
that's a good one,
not
man.
to put a pressure on you.
No, that's a good one.
But
that's a good one.
I'm noticing from some of my like esteemed friends, men that are way smarter than me and men that have bigger hearts than me. And they're reaching out to me. They're so excited. They're like, oh, you have Jordan coming in today. You know, he touches me. Like they feel connection.
Yeah, well, I'm actually, as I said, I'm actually thrilled. And when, you know, and all sorts of people are coming up to me after the talks and on the streets and so forth and saying it. And a fair number of them are guys, often younger, but not always. And, you know, they want to come up and tell me something good that they've done. And I'm thrilled about it. It's like, good, man, get out there, kill it.
Yeah.
And the idea, like, because part of what's happened in the dialogue in our culture is that masculine responsibility, the willingness to shoulder responsibility, which is part of what factors into achievement and ambition. It's really the part of it that's only positive, is being confused with tyranny and oppression, and so that men are, in large part, being punished for their best impulses.
Right.
Like, you want to get out there and like do something. It's like, well, doing things wrecks the earth.
Right.
It's like, well, the earth is wrecking us, so it's only just that we defend ourselves a little bit. Yeah. But it's also just wrong. It's like that willingness to go out there and contend with the world, to go on your adventure, right, and to take the risks and the entrepreneurial risks and the risks of discipline and the risks of responsibility, and to buttress and support the family system and the community system. That's all incredibly laudable. But for me, it's more than that, because I think of it as a bulwark against hell. And I mean that both literally and metaphysically. It's like, it's actually vital that you take your place in the world and you find a meaningful, responsible path forward, because it's in that pathway that you find the meaning in your life, and that buttresses you against the catastrophe of life. And if you don't have that, you have the aimlessness and the suffering and the pointlessness and your own malevolence and bitterness. It's hell.
Yeah.
And then you make hell for you, and you make hell for your family, and you make hell for the community. It's like, none of that's good. And so whenever I see people step away from that and they're moving forward and they're telling me about it, I think, and I really think, great, that's a miracle, man. Keep it up. Like, it's really important. And I don't care what you're doing, you know, and I have lots of respect for working class guys. I mean, I came from a little town. I've had all sorts of working class jobs. You know, I worked as a short order cook, and I worked as a bartender in a rough cowboy bar, a couple of them. I worked as a drill bit retipper and a gas jockey, and I worked on a rail crew, putting railway lines through, and worked as a beekeeper and in plywood mill, lots and lots of jobs like that. And, you know, and I've renovated houses, and so I've worked with lots of contractors and so forth. And I think working class guys, the whole bloody world rests on their shoulders. It really matters if they do a good job. And so a lot of working class guys come to my shows and they say, look, I've been listening to your lectures while I'm I'm doing long haul trucking or while I'm working in my forklift, whatever, I think, great, man, get the hell at it. Do your job properly.
Do it.
You bet. And do it right. Support your family. Man the hell up. Live a responsible life. And what you're doing is valuable. I don't care what anyone else has to say about it.
Yeah, I've heard, I'm in a 12-step program. I'm in an AA, right? So I was I'm in recovery, so almost 2 years now. And that really changed my life, getting into, 12 steps. And, and I know that's your book, but one of the things that stuck with me is esteemable people do esteemable things. And it's like,
right.
And it's like when you have that choice to do something,
it's better than
right.
alcohol, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, if you're trying to stop drinking, you need something better than alcohol. And alcohol's pretty good.
Yeah.
So you better find something a lot better, man. Yeah. And it is. And then esteemable people do esteemable things. It's like, yeah, well, you want to figure out something that you're doing with your life that's worth not getting drunk and screwing up.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's fun.
Yeah, you want to have something on the other side of that teeter-totter that has some value to you.
You bet. And so that you can think, no, I'm not going to get drunk and screw that up.
Right.
Because, you might say, well, why do people drink too much? It's like, if you like alcohol, that's a stupid question.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, why do people drink too much? Well, because it's great.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so why stop? Well, you do stupid things when you're drunk. You hurt yourself. You compromise your health. It's really hard on the people around you. You tend to turn into a liar, and it screws up your life.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, but it's pretty fun. Yeah, well, it is. But you need something better than that. And what's better isn't being straight and not making mistakes. It's like that's all prohibition in some sense. What's better is, no, you need an adventure, man. You need to get out there and have something to do.
Yeah.
And something worth waking up for. And that's the substitute for the addiction. Actually, the addiction is the substitute for that, if truth be known.
Right, but eventually you can flip that around and you can find the much girthier and more. There's a lot of sexy weight in having self-worth, and that's what I've started to slowly find in my life.
Yeah, and you might also, like the thing too is, there's something kind of, I don't know, the bar scene, the heavy drinking scene, there's something kind of edgy about it, and something kind of adventurous about it. And, you see that it's kind of dramatized in people like Tom Waits, who's got that real hard edge, or Johnny Cash, or people, hard living guys.
Oh, yeah. Guys with 6 or 7 livers in them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, there's something kind of romantic about that.
Yes.
And fair enough, but, well, then what that means is you have to build something like that into your own life. So maybe you need to take an adventurous trip now and then. You got to have something there that's edgy to replace that.
And sometimes if people need a catalyst, so there's that moment, right? Like for me, the catalyst was like, I needed to I was experimenting with cocaine and I sacrificed like a neat job opportunity with that. I had planned on being there for the job. And next thing you know, I'd spent the night doing cocaine. Right. So I realized, okay, this is a little out of my control, so I have to make this. But if people don't have that sort of, how do they create? Is there a way to create their own catalyst? Like you just said, like take a trip or.
Well, one thing. Okay, so one of the things we talking about is I have this program online called. You can find it at selfauthoring.com, or you can find it on my website.
Yep, and we'll put both the links right here.
Okay, so one of the programs help you write about your life. And by the way, you don't have to be able to write very well to do this. And if you do it badly, that's just fine as long as you do it, because doing it is badly is way better than not doing it at all, which is kind of like a motif for life, right? Get the hell out there and do it. You're not going to do it perfectly, but it's better than not doing it at all. You'll make your mistakes, but you'll learn. One part of the program, which is the future authoring program, helps people develop a plan for their life. You actually need a plan for your life, because the thing is, a plan gives you goals, things to aim at. And like, imagine you went to the shooting range and you didn't have a target. Well, what the hell fun is that? What are you going to do? Shoot your rifle into the air? There's nothing about that that's useful.
Shoot your friend, shoot your wife.
You're still shooting,
right,
but it's not fun.
Right, there's no game.
That's right, and the game is to hit the damn target. Okay, so first of all, there's no game without a target. All right, so fine, you need a target. And then you might say, well, is the game worthwhile? And the answer might be, well, how challenging is the place that you put the target? If it isn't challenging enough, if it's challenging enough, the game will be worthwhile. Well, there you go. That's the secret to life. It's like, if what you're aiming at is challenging enough, the game will be worthwhile. Well, it's not worthwhile. It's like, well, reconfigure your aims then. You're not aiming high enough. By your own judgment, say, well, this isn't meaningful. It's like, hey, man, you're not aiming high enough, because if you were, it would be meaningful.
Yeah.
Okay, so while the future authoring program says, like, look, the first thing you want to do is decide that you're responsible for taking care of yourself like you're someone hypothetically worthwhile. Okay, so that's the first thing. It's like the same, imagine you have a kid and you like the kid and you'd like things to go well for them. So you got to have that attitude towards yourself,
right,
despite all your flaws, which are manifold.
And that's hard for a lot of people to get to.
Oh God, yes, and no wonder, because, you know, most of us are fixer-uppers and we need some work. And so it's not so easy to come up with the whole self-love, which is not something I'm not that comfortable with anyways. But the fact that you're not perfect doesn't mean that you aren't worth improving. That's the thing.
I love that.
So, okay, so then the next thing is, so get yourself in that state of mind. Just assume it. Maybe there's something in me worth redeeming. All right, next thing. Assume that if you aim at it, you might at least be able to get close to it.
Okay.
Right? Or that you'll aim at it and miss, but your aim will get better across time.
And you're taking a shot in the right direction.
Yes, that's exactly it. And you're starting to move in the right direction. And even if you haven't got your goals specified properly, as you move towards them, you'll get smarter and you'll be able to make better goals. So you're on the right track.
You're starting to calibrate.
You're starting to calibrate. Exactly what you're doing. You're starting to calibrate. That's exactly it. And then the next issue is, okay, now here's another hypothesis. If you aim at it, you might get it. But you're not going to get it if you don't aim at it.
Right.
You might not get it if you aim at it, but you might get it. So that's at least you're setting up the preconditions.
Right.
Next step. Imagine your life 3 to 5 years down the road, and you get to have what you need and want, assuming you're reasonable. Okay, so these are the things to consider. How would you like your family to be if it could be the way you wanted it to be? What are you going to do with your relationships with your siblings and your parents? What about your kids and your wife? Your intimate relationship, right? If you could have what you wanted, what it would look like, your career or your job, what's it going to be, and how are you going to conduct yourself in it? How are you going to educate yourself? Because you're not as smart as you could be. You need to know some more things, because unless your life's perfect, you're too ignorant. That's basically the issue. How are you going to take care of yourself mentally and physically? How are you going to withstand the temptations of drugs and alcohol? What are you going to do outside of your work that's productive, engaging, and meaningful? Okay, so that's 7 things. It's just, even hypothetically, if you could have what you wanted, what would it look like? Okay, next thing. Write for 15 minutes about what your life could be like in 3 to 5 years if you had what you want, just so you know.
If you had what you want.
Yeah, if you had what you wanted, what would it be?
Right.
Like, and don't be ridiculous about it. It has to be, hypothetically within your, well, that's it. You can have a castle in the air. Well, except they won't stay in the air, so like, you know, let's stay with...
And there's going to be laws.
Well, there's all...
Are there? You know what I'm saying? Like,
there's going to be laws.
They're going to tax you probably.
And there's going to be other people that you have to take into account. So let's assume this is like in the real world and everything, just so that we can ground
yes, 100%.
Okay, so do that. Next thing. Take stock of your idiocies and weaknesses and assume that in 3 to 5 years, they auger you into the ground and you are in the worst hell you could design for yourself. That's probable. Write out that, because that gives you something to avoid. Because when you're thinking, well, I have something difficult to do, why the hell should I bother? It's like, oh yeah, so I won't end up in that hell.
Right.
Right, because part of it is, well, I want to get to where I want to go. That's kind of nice and it's hopeful and it makes you positive. But that's not enough. You also need to be terrified out of your skull.
Yeah.
And the only way to do that properly, well, I'm sure this must have happened when you decided to stop drinking. You must have thought, this isn't good.
I'm not going to be funny anymore. I thought that. I thought there was going to be ramifications, yeah.
Okay, and so what were they? What did you foresee happening?
I thought I wouldn't be funny. I thought that people wouldn't like me. I thought that I wouldn't be able to meet girls if I wasn't drinking or having drugs or
right, so that was what you were afraid of giving up if you stopped drinking.
Right.
What were you afraid of happening if you kept drinking?
I was afraid of not achieving my dreams. I was afraid of, ending up a drug addict. I was afraid of dying in my sleep. Something, dying under the influence.
Okay, so it's not like that doesn't happen to comedians.
Right,
it happens a lot.
Yeah, it's one of our go-to moves.
Right, well, exactly. Well, it's not an occupational hazard because you're up late at night and you're around bars all the time. It is because you're up late at night and you're
Chris
partying
Farley right here.
Right.
Happened to him.
Well, and it happened to all sorts of comedians and rock musicians. It usually happens at about 27. Weirdly enough. So you were afraid you're going to die, or you're afraid you're going to become addicted. So let's say what would have life like been like you for you if you were addicted? So you don't have a career anymore.
No.
Right? So you've given all that up and failed. So that's fun. So that's going to drive you even more towards drugs.
Yeah, it would have been all my dreams. It would have been miserable.
Right.
It would have been hell.
Exactly. So why quit drinking? So I don't end up in hell. Hey, there's a reason to stop. And then if you make that hell real, it's like, here's all the details of my personal hell. Yes, let's avoid that.
Right.
So then you have something to run the hell away from.
Right. So now you have something towards and something to run away from. And I'll say this too, if there's any young men or women out there who are listening to Jordan feeling like, well, I don't know if I start doing something different, like my friends are going to act a certain.
Yeah, they are.
They are.
Yeah, that's
But you're
right.
you're going to start creating conversations. You're going to become the intrigue because you're going to be bringing something new to the table.
You're also going to find out who your friends are.
Yeah.
Because if you're starting to put your life together and you have friends that object, those are not friends. Those are just people you know. They're not friends because a friend is someone, this is one of the hallmarks of a friend. Here's 2 hallmarks.
Mm-hmm.
A friend is someone you can tell bad news to. And they won't tell you why you're an idiot and they won't interfere with your suffering. They'll just listen and maybe they'll suffer along with you. Okay, so you can tell bad news to them and they won't tell you some worse thing that happened to them. They'll listen and they'll suffer along with you. But a friend is also someone you can tell good news to. And the friend will say, wow, in this vale of tears, something good happened to you. Great, man.
Congrats.
I'm wonderful. It's rare. It's unlikely. Good for you. I hope 10 more things like that happen. And they're not envious and they're not jealous and they're not one-upping you. And if you're trying to get your life together, if you're trying to get your life together and your friends get in the way, that's actually real useful for you because you've now identified who your friends aren't. And you might think, well, I can't give them up. It's like, oh, yes, you can. And not only can you should, and it would be better for them. Because if they're aiming down and they want you going down with them, there's nothing good about what's happening to them, and there's certainly nothing good about that for you.
Yeah, they're not going to, and then they're going to learn, wow, I'm going to lose friends if I continue in these directions. Yeah.
Exactly.
Why is it hard for people to let go of what's so familiar to them, even if it's bad?
Well, because it's complicated. And the thing, that's a really good question. You discount the risk of familiarity that they're familiar with. So let's say,
because people are in relationships with the drugs and alcohol. People are in relationships with humans. People are in relationships with jobs. People are in relationships with their own selves, and they're living a lie every single day. But it's familiarity.
Yeah. Well, you say I have a job I hate. It's like, well, yeah, but I'm not dying from it. It's like not as bad as it can be. So you factored in the risks already. They get invisible. You think, well, I can't jump out of this job because what about all the risk? It's like, yeah, no kidding. You got to get your resume in order. You got to send it out. You got to send 50 of the damn things out before anybody will call you back. Then you have to go get interviewed, and maybe you're not any good at that. You have to come up with a story while you're a good employee, and maybe you're not yet. So you have to figure out how to do that. It's like, what about all these risks if I go look for a new job? It's like, yeah, absolutely, man. Those are risks, and they're harsh, and no wonder you're avoiding them. What about the risks for you to stay with this job you absolutely hate? Well, let's think that through. Okay, so I have this dead-end job. I hate it. I'm getting bitter. Where am I going to be in 5 years? I know where, because I've watched this with people. You're going to be just like you are now, except a lot more of what's good about you is going to be gone, and a lot more of what's terrible is going to be amplified. And you're going to be like, in 5 years, you're going to be 10 years older instead of 3 years older.
Yeah.
Right. And
because it kills your spirit somehow.
Oh, man. Yeah. So it's like you think, oh, my God, there's a terrible risk in pursuing this new job. It's like, yeah, there is a terrible risk. There's a terrible risk in you staying with your job right now. And so one of the things that's really, really freeing to understand is that you're screwed no matter what you do. There's no secure path forward. Give it up. It's risk everywhere. You think, oh my God, that's terrible. It's like, yes, except for 2 things. You can pick your risk. That's the first thing. So you get to pick your poison. That's something. And second, you're a lot tougher than you think. So even though there's risk everywhere, if you confront it forthrightly, what you'll find is that